Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining another episode of the Educational Leadership Podcast. We have Superintendent Clugston from Pine Tree ISD. Very excited to have today's interview. And we have our co-host, Corinne French.
Yay, so glad to be here.
Yes, so exciting. Before we jump into the interview, we want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Ideal Impact. Ideal Impact's providing funding to school districts in the form of a free gift. It's a virtual endowment, happens every year. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been given so far. And so if your district needs funding and doesn't want to involve the government and taxpayers and all that, reach out to Ideal Impact. They can get you some funding, maybe some higher teacher salaries. Okay, so into the interview now. So Superintendent Clugston, thanks for joining us.
I appreciate the invite, guys. Looking forward to it.
Yes, we're so excited. If you can, for the listeners, tell us a little bit about your background.
Oh, goodness. My 32nd year. It's my 5th year here at Pine Tree. We're a 5A district with about 4,600 kids here in Longview, Texas. Started out like a whole lot of people, teaching and coaching, driving a school bus, working a little maintenance in the summer, you name it, I probably did it. And did that for 8 years and then moved into a principalship. Did that for 4 years and then moved into an assistant soup job down at a district of about 2,500 just outside of Houston, and did that for 3 years. And I started out as a superintendent of a little 1A school of about 500 kids. Spent 6 years there. Spent another 6 years in a district about double that size. It was about 1,200, and then spent a little over 6 years there, and then I've been here for like I say, going halfway through 5 years.
It's amazing. Wow. Yeah, that. You've probably seen a lot over the years. What are you passionate about in public education right now?
I think it's the thing that gets me is, I see teachers getting frustrated, all over, and for some reason, there's a lot of people sitting in my position that are more worried about keeping a job than really fighting the good fight to do what we have to do to really prepare our kids for their future. Good administration that supports teachers, that gives them what they need, takes care of the discipline problems for them. And my job's real simple. I've got to get the obstacles out of my teachers' way, so they can do their job. And and their job is a daunting task. I tell them all the time, your job is to, get a whole bunch of kids, inspire a whole bunch of kids to achieve more than they believe they can achieve. And that's hard work. But it's not impossible. If I don't get the obstacles out of their way, then it's an impossible task. And so I refuse to let it be impossible for them. So we do a lot of things to make sure we get teachers what they need and make sure we get those obstacles out of their way.
Go ahead, Corinne.
Well, I love that. I looked at your mission statement a few minutes ago in preparation for this, and I love the Pine Tree family champions the relentless pursuit of excellence. And you're talking about obstacles and how you're going to fight for them, and that relentless pursuit. Probably last year, so we had a guest, a husband and wife on our podcast, and that's what the word relentless is also part of their mission statement. And I just love that. And so how does that, you mentioned the obstacles, and we all know some of the obstacles that have been with us in the past. What are some obstacles that you see specific to your district and just in general in the future that we're not thinking of?
Well, if you take my district, if you go back just 20 years ago, my district was nearly all middle class and upper middle class, white kids, and great deal of parental support. But it's a small district. There's a lot of, at the time when it was really the place to be, everybody wanted to be here, and there wasn't room for a lot of, housing additions, things like that. So there's been a lot of really nice duplexes. The problem is they're 30, 40-year-old duplexes now. Well, generally, rent property becomes 30, 40 years old. Who generally rents it? Well, tends to be poor people. And so that, and a lot of our, the poor in America for the most part tends to be, broken homes and single moms and things of that nature. And so there's a whole set of challenges that come with it and a whole new set of needs. And when I came to Pine Tree, they were really struggling with that adjustment. really trying to do it, I'd say, on the academic side, and really, you know, dictating really everything to teachers. And you got to do it this way, and they can. When, the elephant in the room was, they didn't have enough structure, and these kids weren't, doing the things they need to do in class, and weren't acting the way they need to act. And a lot of times those parents don't know how to always come up and address people, and they weren't keeping them at bay. And so they were just bleeding teachers, and the families that understood, how to get involved in education, they're seeing these things, and so they're leaving. And the problem just, starts getting worse from there. We kind of live in this disposable society where we just, when it gets bad, we just move out. Everybody that can moves out somewhere else. And then when it gets bad, they move out a little farther. Nobody seems to really want to solve the problem. I mean, a whole lot of people look at my kids that I have here, and they come up with every excuse on why they can't. We look at our kids and we say, here's a solution so that we can. And, I mean, we start out, we're big on discipline. Our kids are going to act right. Every kid's got 3 rules here, and they're non-negotiable. You're going to show up, you're going to act right, and you're going to work hard. And that's non-negotiable, because that's what's going to make you successful in life. And it's really that simple. It's not complicated. It's just not easy to do. It takes a lot of hard work, a lot of love, and, sometimes it takes takes a few butt whoopings in there, I mean, it's whatever it takes to get it done.
It's interesting you say that. And first, when your first initial intro in the intro, it made me think of, when you said not just surviving, it made me think of not survive, but thrive. Right. And now as you're talking about kind of the transitions that have happened in the district, it kind of makes you wonder, because I was thinking about this recently. I have 3 kids as well. And, and maybe it's not necessarily a poverty thing, but there are situations where, different things happen, people move into a district, and maybe their home life isn't that great. Right. And the kids, they have behavioral problems, they have other things. And it's funny how when those students get into the classroom, that people want to leave right away. They want to move their kids into a different classroom, or they want to leave the community, or it's interesting that people are letting that influence them versus them trying to influence the negative behavior.
Well, I think what happens, it depends on whether you have control over that negative behavior. I mean, nobody wants to put their kid in a class where, let's be honest, where a kid's dropping, F-bombs and everything else, and being overly aggressive. And if there's nobody dealing with that, then, in a parent's defense, or even in a teacher's defense, if nobody's helping them solve that problem, then they're going to run away from that problem. I mean, they're going to go somewhere that problem doesn't exist. And I think a lot of people in my job want to ignore that problem, or say, well, that's just, that's their background, they'll have to work it out. No, nobody's taught them how to be successful. I mean, every behavior I look at that a kid has here, and anytime anybody wants to argue about, why we're getting on to them about that, I say, well, you tell me where that behavior makes them successful as an adult. Because if it doesn't, then why are we allowing it?
Yeah.
All we're doing is setting them up for failure. I refuse to do that. But there's a whole lot of people in schools today that will ignore that because it's easier. Mine's harder. And sometimes I got to, mama's going to come up here and she's going to be all upset at me, and she's going to make every excuse in the world for her kid because she really maybe doesn't know how to be successful. Well, here's the thing. My job's to prepare that kid for the road ahead, not the road for the kid, because the world doesn't work that way. I got to prepare that kid for whatever road it is. And I'm hard on my kids, and we demand a lot of them. But right now it's okay because, we build a relationship with our kids. We love our kids. And if we're hard on them and they kind of get down, we're here to pick them up and dust them off and put them back in the game. If we don't prepare them to where the world doesn't knock them down, when the world knocks them down, they'll step on their neck and never get off of it. I look at it this way. If you really want to grade what kind of job we do, quit worrying about where my test scores are and start worrying about where are my kids 2 years after they get out of my building. Where are they at then? Because if they're sitting down there on the corner begging for $2, then I did a pretty crappy job.
Yeah.
Now you're talking my language. I think test scores are one form of measurement, but where students are going after high school is, to me, one of the biggest indicators of success of that district, because and it doesn't have to always be college. Even though I work in
Well,
higher ed, it can be very successful in the military, very successful going right to an industry, very successful moving and going somewhere, just some dream they want to do, but feeling confident in that next space. And like you're saying, prepared.
adults. Yes, and we want to
Mhm.
produce successful adults.
Mhm.
And so it really comes down. I mean, I look at why I'm successful. I mean, I've got bachelor's degree and master's degree and everything else, but essentially, it's not the degree that made me successful.
Mhm.
It's the things that I can do. The degrees just increase my knowledge and exposure, but it's the habits I had that allowed me to get that degree that I put to work with more knowledge and more exposure in the workplace. And so making sure those kids have those innate, what a lot of people call soft skills, that's what we really have to concentrate on. And they don't get taught, seventh period, their junior year in Coach Jackson's class. These are things that are instilled in people throughout their life. And when we look at our middle class or anybody who goes home to a stable family, those things are taught in the family, and then whether they go to church or whether they go to a Boy Scout club or a Boys and Girls Club, anything they do, those things for the most part were widely, they were taught at home, they were in school, they were at the church, they were at maybe a club, they were in Little League, they were everywhere those kids went. And so it was very easy for it to become a part of who the kid was. Today we got broken homes. We got, a lot of kids that are left at home by themselves after school. And I don't think a lot of schools don't understand how important that structure is, because our kids a lot of times aren't coming to us with that. And so it has to become a part of our culture from the time they step on our campus as pre-K until they leave us, and in every program we have. We preach those things nonstop, because by the time they leave us, those things, they can't just be doing them because we have a relationship and they want to please us, because that doesn't carry beyond our doors. It has to become who they are inside, because that will carry beyond our doors. And if they
Although I
take
think a little healthy fear, somewhat of a healthy fear is okay. I remember when one of my sons was doing something, I won't say exactly what he was doing, but it was needing to make a vow, saying what he did. And I was so excited. I was like, oh, he made good decisions because of me. And he's like, no, it was the coach. It was UIL. I was like, okay, I'll take it.
well,
I'll
the whole
take it.
thing,
End result.
it's teamwork. We
Yeah,
work
right.
together. They talk about, takes a village to raise a kid. Well, it does, but
Right.
so often, we've got a news cycle and everybody else, a lot of our political leaders, everybody's all about, creating distrust and everything else. And it's caused so much of society to not work together near as much as I think we used to. I think you still see it a lot of times in small towns, and, you'll see kids that struggle in small towns that tend to be a little more successful because, they kind of don't slip through the cracks. And,
Sure.
but I think also that small town, there's a little more trust in there. So they work together a little bit better. As you get in bigger towns and bigger communities, that's, they don't know each other as well. And, you turn on the news, like I can have 20 good things going on at our school, and to get the news media out there is very, very difficult. But I can promise you, you give a fender bender with one of my buses, they'll beat me to the scene.
For sure.
It's all
So
about,
how do y'all tell your story so that you can keep that, the trust with the public, but also so your students see your school as a positive environment? Are there ways that you've been able to tell your story in a different way? And I should tell our guests ahead of time, we don't ask questions to poke any holes. This is an organic conversation. I'm truly just interested.
we take that, very seriously. Schools are pretty good. We're pretty good about getting, information to our parents, but it's the greater community that needs to have the information as well, because they're part of it. I mean, they're taxpayers and everything else. We do, we take a very aggressive approach to this. We do commercials that we put on the 10 o'clock news and everything else. And we're doing probably 3 to 4 of those every year. We get them professionally done, and our commercials aren't so much about hey, look, the football team did this or the band did this. It's more about this is what we believe in, and this is why we believe it. I
Mhm.
want you to know what we believe, because if you believe it like we do, I think we're a very special place.
Mhm.
It's just like I sit down with every teacher we hire. I've got 400 professionals and another 300 auxiliary staff. But I sit down with every one of the teachers we hire, and I tell them what we believe in. Because if you believe the way we do, then it's special. If you're just kind of looking for a check, if you're just looking for a job, we're probably not it. We're going to be a very demanding place, because you have to believe like us to be willing to put in the time and effort it takes. And like I say, to an extent, for the kids that struggle the most, we're raising those kids, because there's either nobody at home that's going to do that, or maybe the person at home doesn't know how to be successful.
Right.
Generational poverty, they hadn't seen it.
Mhm.
My youngest, I've got 4 daughters, and my youngest came to live with us when she was 13 months old full time. Her mother at that time had 5 kids, couldn't take care of 5. Her biological mother today has 11. Her mother's mother had 9. And it's a generational thing. They don't even know how to be successful. They don't know what it takes. They don't understand that, and nobody's ever taught them. And so, I look at my daughter today, she can be whatever she wants to be. I mean, she's, and she has none of my DNA. The only thing different is the environment she's in. That's it. But it's a
Wow.
environment. It's a hard work environment. It's, you care about people, you work hard, you treat others right. It's not complicated. Like I say, it's just not easy to do, because it takes a great deal of time and effort.
I like that phrase, not complicated. It's just not easy.
Yeah. Well,
That's brilliant. I mean, it's not that complicated, but it isn't easy either. And
Like golf.
yeah,
yeah. Just hit the ball straight,
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I love that. Well, I want to know, what are some of the things that have kept you going over the years? I mean, you told us about your history, and I love when we get to see a little snippet in the journey and the different size districts, and what is something that's kept you going? Do you have a poem, a quote, something someone told you when you were 10? What's been the thread that's kept you going all of these years?
I'm a guy of faith, and I think God puts every one of us on this planet for a reason. We all have a purpose. And, when I look at my career, it's funny that the district I'm in, when I first got into administration, this was the place to be back then. And I remember I put in for a job and didn't even get a sniff, didn't get an interview, And then when I put in this time, it's like the skill set that I developed over the years was exactly what they needed when I put in this time. And some of the same board members were on the school board that hired me, and I told them that story. And I said, here's the thing. They were like, oh, we're sorry we didn't consider you then. I said, no, you didn't need me then. The skill set I brought was not what you needed. The skill set I have today is exactly what our kids need. So it's, I think I'm here because I'm supposed to be. This is my purpose. I've been guided to this school, and the things that I've been able to prosper at and be good at it are what's needed right now. And, because sometimes, we've got to stand up and say, no, we're not going to tolerate that. No, that's not acceptable. And, sometimes we've got to win over some parents sometimes that don't really, they've never had a good school experience, and, they really don't know how to react to certain things. But I think we win a lot of them over, and they buy in. They start to realize that, man, my kid loves them. My kids are being successful. And, eventually they start going, you know what, maybe they're not too bad there. And
That's powerful.
It takes time, and it takes, like I said, it takes a lot of energy. We spend a lot of time at extracurricular events, and I spend probably 80-90% of my time on campuses. I've got to build relationships with our people. We got 690 people total, and then I've got 4,600 kids. I may not know every kid's name, but I need every kid to know who I am. And I need every kid to understand that what that teacher's telling, what that teacher believes in, that I believe in the same things. You don't get to appeal to me to get out because she's holding you accountable. No, she's holding you accountable because it's in your best interest. And so, they need to understand we're on the same team, and our goal is for you to be successful.
Yeah. I mean, what you're talking about being successful is much deeper than tactical things, which I think is great. It's you're talking about instilling values in people and building their character, which I think is phenomenal. And yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. My daughter, who's 9 years old, she she came home one day and said one of the students was dropping the F-bomb in third grade. And I'm like, what is going on? And I messaged the teacher, and the teacher is aware of it, and she's working on it. But it's it's interesting what's going on in society right now. And I think those deeper lessons on values and character are more important now than ever. So I definitely applaud you and your district and what you are doing. So very exciting. Now, I know we're running short on time. So one thing we like to do at the end of the podcast is ask, we want you to give a shout out. Who do you think, who else has a good story in public education that probably should come on here and share their story and get the good word out about some of the great things that are happening in public ed?
I gotta, I'll give you a couple names, here. When I came here, I was able to bring some people with me that I had known or worked with in the past that understood the challenges that we face and were willing to fight the battles it takes. And that's Dr. Eric Cedarstrom. He is now the superintendent at Stephenville ISD. And Eric was a small school superintendent with me in the region I was in. And when he, had been there a while and everything was rolling pretty good. And I remember I called him up and asked him if he was bored. And he said, well, yeah, I am. I said, well, you really go fight the good fight. And so, he came out here and spent, 4 years with us, and he's out there, fighting a good fight again. And so, two other guys, a guy named Matt Davenport, he left us this last year to take the superintendency in Collinsville. That's his hometown, and they were struggling a little bit and reached out to him. And, Matt gets it and he understands what it takes. And so he's there. And then Stephen English is another one. He was a principal for me at one time and came over here as an assistant soup, and he took over as superintendent in Hemphill this past summer. And they're out there spreading, I think a little different way of doing things, but I think it's the right way. And we tend to make policy based on what's more convenient for our middle class and upper middle class kids. We're going to be fine with those kids. We're going to do well. Everybody is. We need to make decisions based on what's best for the kids that really don't have anybody to help.
That's so powerful. Thank you so much for that, Steve. I can't wait. We'll reach out to all of them, but I am taking particular interest in Matt from Collinsville ISD. That is a border district where I live. And so I cannot wait, and we'll email him and let him know that you gave a shout out. And so give him a heads up. We're going to be reaching out to him, and we'll reach out to the three of them. I love what you said about making policy for the students who need you the most. And that speaks to me. And I just want to thank you for the work that you've done for students who need you the most. That as we go into the holiday season and we think of students maybe being in difficult situations over the holiday and being away from the teachers that love them so much and the principals and superintendents, my heart goes out to them. And I'm just so thankful that you have given so much of your time to students and making policy for students that need it. So this has been delightful.
My shirt here says Merry Christmas. It's a pirate Christmas shirt, and we sell these. We come up with one every October, and we sell them in order to raise money for our needy kids. And so this year we raised money for 187 kids and provided Christmas for them. And the majority of these shirts get bought by my staff and their family and, people who are involved, at the school. And to me, that says a whole lot about where their heart is, and it's about meeting the needs of our kids. Somebody told me, I had a kid tell me one time, when I first started, I went back to my old high school and I had a kid named Calvin in class, and he was a senior repeating biology, and he had to have it to graduate. And so we get to the end of the first semester, and I'm telling everybody their semester grade. Tell Calvin, I said, you got a 68. Calvin's like, Coach, you don't care about me. I can't believe you gave me a 68. And I was like, Calvin, I can give you 68. You earned a 68, And he just kept on saying I didn't care about him, And I said, how do you say that? I said, I went to school with your older brother. I mean, we went to school from, second grade all the way through. And, and here I've got you know, I care. I mean, we grew up in the same town. I grew up with, no, you don't care. You don't care. And he finally, I said, explain that to me. And Calvin looked at me, said, said, Coach, he said, I know I didn't do the work. He said, but you let me have that 0. He said, if I'd been your own kid, he said, you would have tore their butt up before you would let them have handing a 0. He was right. And back there in the day, us coaches, we just took them out in the hall and, whooped them with the paddle. And so I'm a 23-year-old kid and he's 18 and I get him up against the wall. And every time he doesn't have his work turned in by the end of the week, I'm giving him a few swats to remind him. And about April, I'm fixing to give him his swats because he has something missing that week. And he stopped me, turned to me and said, Coach, I think I liked it better when you didn't care so much. The exciting thing about that is, he got his stuff turned in, he passed the class and he graduated, and that's one of those things. I mean, it hit me hard. And so, all these kids, if we really care, then we care about them like they belong to us, like they're our own.
We do.
And,
for sure.
do for them what we do for our own. I don't make excuses for mine and, because it doesn't serve her well or, any of my daughters. And, I've got 3 that are grown and married and, they're real successful. And I think, that's been a combination of what me and my wife have done and the school that they've gone to and all the circles they run in. For the kids that don't have those positive circles, we have to really be intentional about what we do with them when they're in our circle.
Well, I'm excited to have you in my circle of new friends. So this has been truly delightful and encouraging. And I just want to thank you, Steve, for your time today.
Well, I appreciate you guys, having me on. I enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you. And before we close out, we want to give a shout out to our sponsor again, iDo Impact. iDo Impact is providing funding to school districts, hundreds of millions of dollars, doesn't involve taxpayers, and it's an endowment that keeps on giving every year. So if you need funding, reach out to iDo Impact. And for those of y'all who have been tuning in, stay tuned for future episodes of the Educational Leadership Podcast.